Hey folks, Piano Man Steve Lungrin here, founder of LearningMusicIsFun.com and creator of the Piano Man Approach online piano course. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to take a look at The Gambler by Kenny Rogers today, and we're going to run it through my magic formula for learning songs, which is 5 steps, and I call it the glide formula. We'll get into that momentarily, but before we do, I just want to humbly request that if you enjoy content like this, maybe you'd give me a like and subscribe to my channel and click the little bell if you'd like notifications when I put new content out. Really helps me make my way up the search rankings, and it's good for everyone involved. Also, if at any time this sparks your interest to the point where you'd like more information, you can always head over to pianomanapproach.com, and they've got some free materials there that you can check out, learn a little more about the pillars that I teach: chords, rhythm patterns, improv techniques, etc. So anyway, enough of that housekeeping. Let's get into this song, shall we? So this song has always been a favorite of mine, and of course Kenny Rogers has been on my mind periodically this year. This is 2020 when I'm filming this, and he passed away just at the very beginning of this whole pandemic quarantine thing, and this, I think, was his signature song, The Gambler. So we're going to take a second, and we're going to run through the steps of my song learning formula. As I said, it's called the glide formula because the steps spell out glide. So let me put up my cool visual aid here. So as you can see, step 1, we get the chords, which you can do by simply going to Google and typing in your song title, followed by the word chords. It'll almost always pop up, and most of the time the first one will be with ultimateguitartabs.com, or I never say that right, but you'll see it. It's almost always the first one at the top of the Google search, and then the next step is listen to the song. So you want to head over to YouTube or Spotify or any of the many options that you have to either listen to it for free, or if you happen to be a subscriber, and you take a listen to the song. Then you identify the rhythm pattern, or the feel, if you will. That's where we come to the piano. So I do not have the licensing to just play that recording here on this video, so I'm going to pretend like we've already done that, and you obviously can go do that right now if you like. But if we did listen, what we would hear is that it starts out kind of without the band. It's just a couple of acoustic guitars at the beginning kind of doing some weird... And then he starts singing, on a warm summer's evening, on a train bound for nowhere. And then eventually, then they bring in bass and drums and whatnot. But when you finally get into the main part of the song, that's when we want to try and figure out the rhythm pattern. Because the rhythm pattern is designed to approximate the whole recording. It's there to approximate the band. We're not just picking songs that have a prominent piano part trying to copy the piano player. We want any song to work with this, and we want to become the band, not just the piano player. So I have 4 essential, just sort of basic rhythm patterns that we always like to start with, because pretty much every song in all forms of popular music can be condensed down to one of those 4. So what you do is you start running through the chord progression that they've got written for you there, handy-dandy for free on the internet, through these 4 essential rhythm patterns, and see which one feels like the song. So we start out with the basic pattern, as I call it, and this is all on my website, so you can go check out. You can learn more about that at learningmusicIsFun.com or pianomanapproach.com. They both lead the same place now. So we try the basic feel with an E flat. We're in the key of E flat, and we start out on an E flat chord. On a warm summer's evening, on a train down from nowhere. It's okay. It kind of works, but Something about it doesn't feel quite right. So then we move on and we go to what I call the syncopated feel, or the heartbeat feel. On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound for nowhere. Something still seems to be lost in translation. So then we go to the third one, which I call the country feel. Now, don't let that name fool you, because you're going to think, well, duh, this is a country song. Country feel will sometimes be used on pop songs, and the heartbeat or syncopated feel or the basic feel will often be used in country songs. But there is a high correlation throughout the history of country music with this particular feel. So we try it out, and it looks like this. On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound from nowhere, met up with a gambler. We were both too tired to sleep. And it's like, eureka, this has got to be the right one, doesn't it? You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away. Okay, so we found it. So here's the thing about these rhythm patterns. Why do I start you with a simple rhythm pattern? Well, you know, a lot of people were never taught how to read chord symbols to begin with in their piano lessons, but then quite a few people who took traditional lessons were eventually taught how to read chord symbols, but they were never taught what to do with it. You know, like, what do I do? I know that an E flat chord means I can play E flat, G, and B flat, but for heaven's sakes, like, what do I do from there, you know, other than to just hold them down? On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound from nowhere. These rhythm patterns give you something to plug the chord progressions into that will get you started down the road of approximating what the band is doing in your favorite popular songs. So that's why we do the rhythm patterns, and we start with this simple country feel, which, by the way, if you don't know the notes of the piano or anything like that, again, you can go over to pianomanapproach.com, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff available for you there. So this method is good for a complete beginner, but it's also good for someone who's got many years of training in piano but never really learned how to work with chords and improv techniques at all. Your years of fundamental and technique training is only going to help you, but don't let that be the reason that you don't try it if you are a total beginner. So let me continue with this demo. What we do for the country feel is that in the left hand, we take the root note of the chord. So it's an E flat chord. That makes it E flat. And you alternate back and forth between that and the fifth of the chord. So E flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth is B flat. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So on the counts 1 and 3, we're on the root of the chord and the fifth of the chord. Okay, and then on 2 and 4, we're simply playing the chord up here in the right hand, and we'll just voice it here in what we call root position, E flat, G, B flat, like so. Let me play that nice and slow for you. And you can do that on any chord, be it a major chord, a minor chord, a diminished, an augmented, a suspended. It does not matter. You're playing 1, 5, 1, 5 on whatever chord you're on, and simply playing on the counts 2 and 4, you're playing the chord in the right hand. So you get that nice feel, and that is the foundation that the song will sit on. So like 80% of the work is done right there. That's what I love about rhythm patterns, is that once you get there, now you can have all kinds of fun dressing it up, enhancing it, but 80% of the work is done by just getting the chord progression and plugging it into a good basic rhythm pattern, a good essential rhythm pattern. So The next thing that we do after we identify the rhythm pattern, which we've identified as the country feel, is the D part of glide. And that is you drill it down. What does that mean? Well, for me, what it means is that you want to get this under your fingers in a nice kind of basic way. Meaning, you're not going to try and do anything frills or anything fun just yet, or anything outside of just that rhythm pattern yet. You want the chord progression under your hands before you move on to the next step. So you want to make sure that you're not having trouble moving from one chord to the next chord. So this is your work now. So you go, on a warm summer's evening, on a train down from nowhere, because what you'll find out is E flat, A flat, E flat, E flat, B flat. And for those of you who are interested in playing the melody, don't worry, we're going to get to that later. But the great thing is that this is perfect for people that want to sing or accompany a singer, but it's also the first thing that you go through if you want to play the melody in the right hand rather than sing. So you still have to learn it this way first. So when you are comfortable with it and you can play all the way through the song, you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money when you're sitting at the table. So everything's working fine. Now we are ready to do the last step in the glide formula, which is the E. Enhance it with simple improv techniques. So I like to talk about the simple stuff you can do first, and the simplest place to start is the chord that you're already playing. So let me show you a couple of ideas, because I like to be lazy. I do not like to move my hand all the way up and down the keyboard unless I absolutely have to, and there's a lot of good stuff that you can do right where you already are, so you can be a lazy player and have it work to your advantage. One of my things that I love to do and I preach about all the time is the toggle technique, which is where you take the chord, however you're voicing it, whether it's in root position or first inversion or second inversion, doesn't really matter. But you take the top part of the chord and you play it with this part of your hand and then toggle to whatever note your thumb is on. Ting, 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 ting. And you can use that to make interesting rhythmic stuff. There's two different ways that you can deploy it, by the way. You can use it in a space where there's a little bit of space to fill in between, the singer has a gap and then starts singing again. You can fill that space with a little toggle. Or you can actually enhance the rhythm pattern itself by employing a toggle. So in this, in order to give it a little extra pace, you might want to consider going... See how that really adds a little element, and all you're doing is this one little instead of, but you're already here. You don't have to move your hand for it at all. You're already on that chord. You're just, instead of playing it as one block, and listen to how much more that fills the sound out. It's amazing how a little maneuver like that can fill the sound out so much more. That teeny little thing takes you from to okay. Another thing you can consider doing is maybe you play it vanilla, as I would call it, like this way during the verse, and then maybe during the chorus you move to. because that way you're keeping the rhythmic integrity alive in the song, but you're actually differentiating the verse and the chorus a little bit, which I really like to do, because generally they'll do something in the arrangement, even though you're not really changing the rhythmic structure of the song, which is kind of holding that groove together, but there is something that makes the verse and the chorus stand out from each other. One of them obviously is the melody, but maybe sometimes the drummer will move from a hi-hat over here off to the side of the snare drum to one of the ding-ding-a-ding-ding-a-ding ride cymbals over here. Sometimes they'll do little things like that so that there's just a slightly different kind of sonic atmosphere between the two. So a little maneuver like that can keep the rhythmic groove going just fine, but it'll make the maybe just a slightly interesting difference between the verse and the chorus. So that's something that you might consider doing. Another thing you can do that's kind of a fun improv that's to the rhythm pattern itself is in the left hand, you can actually do what we call passing tones. And a passing tone is simply you're here and you're going to be here, and maybe you walk your way up there. 1, 2, 3, da, 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 da. And what's helpful for this is if you know the scale, not to the point where you don't have to like sit down and be able to play the scale up and down and go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, or ti, do all the way up and down the keyboard. Who cares about that? But if you know, which notes are naturals and which are sharps and flats. So in E flat, we're going to have a B flat, E flat, and A flat. Okay? So you follow the key signature and you just move in the notes within that key signature to the next chord. So in this case, it'd be like E, F, G, A flat, then maybe D, C, B flat, because you're moving from here to this chord. Doesn't have to be done every time. You can pick and choose. It can be done every once in a while, only when it feels good. It doesn't even have to be like a long run like that one. It could be could just be a little pickup note. So that's really up to you. The one thing I love about this method is that it allows you to be creative. The essence of the song is always there, but it's always fresh every single time you play it, because you don't have to play it exactly the same way every time. You just have these tools in your toolkit, your little basket of tricks, or your little bag of tricks, if you will, that you can reach into at any given moment, pull one out, and use it. And I love that about it, because, it's like you're going to play it similarly every time, but you get to make choices every single time that you make it. And so the song never gets stale because of that. It's always alive for you, because every time you play it, you're making real-time choices based on things that you can do. And the more tricks you put in your bag, which, we teach a lot of those over at the Piano Man Approach in the members area. We've got all kinds of licks and fills and different ways to make licks and fills, but there's simple ones, there's complex ones, but the more little tricks that you have in your bag, the more things you can introduce in the moment. And it's really, really exciting to be able to do that. So another one that I like to do, besides just toggling in the right hand, I also like to use arpeggios in the right hand, meaning you take the notes of the chord and you break them into one note at a time and kind of go up or down. And it doesn't matter. It can be in slow rhythm or it can be in a quick rhythm. It just depends on what kind of effect you want to make in the moment. But it's a great way, for me, that's a great way to fill some space. So you're going, know when to hold 'em, know when to bowl 'em, know when to walk away, know never count your money. When you're sitting down the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. Then there's a key change or whatever, it goes to the next key. But see how I just just a nice, you don't have to move your hand, you're already right there. You don't even have to play around with any special notes. You're just playing the same notes that you'd be playing on that E-flat chord. But you're just kind of moving around in rhythm. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It becomes a nice little fill that can take you to the next spot where the voice comes back in or the melody comes back in. So, again, it's lazy, but it serves you well because there's so much good stuff you can get from where your hand already is. I'm not against moving it around the keyboard, but I can tell you that the best way to do cool stuff that moves your hand around the keyboard is to get really good at doing cool stuff right where your hand already is. Because half the time moving your hand around the keyboard is just playing what you would hear and jumping it an octave. You know? And people have no idea that all you did was play the same thing. It's just you did it up here. So, anyway. That's another one of my favorite little bags of tricks, or one of my favorite little trick that I've got in my bag that I can pull out at different times. So that's the formula. You get the chords, you listen to the song, you identify the feel / rhythm pattern, you drill it down in its simplest form, and then you enhance it with simple improv. Now, for those of you who would like to play the melody rather than just accompany yourself singing or somebody else, I have an additional 4 steps, and I don't even have a visual aid for it as of yet, but it's called flow. So start with, now that you've done this, because you have to go through the glide process first, but then you can find the melody. Now, where do you find the melody? Well, you're going to find it sometimes by maybe you'll find a fake book or a lead sheet of some sort. Somebody who's written the melody out with just chords above it. That's a great place to look if you already know how to read music. You might find a YouTube tutorial or something where somebody's drilled it down, and you can just steal that one part of it and use that. Or you can train your ear to do it, and it's not as hard to pick out a melody as you would think. I can just tell you this, most people are afraid of the words learned by ear. They think, oh, I've got a terrible ear for music, I'm tone deaf, I can't whatever. That's usually not true. If you can tell that this note and this note are not the same pitch, then you have what you need to be able to train your ear to pick out melodies. It's just a matter of listening with some intention. You just haven't ever done that in your life, but there's a process that you can work yourself through that can get you sharper and sharper at that. So that's my favorite way to pick out melodies, and you don't have to be as precise as people think with melodies. And I'll give you some examples of that as we play. But so first you find the melody. The L part of flow is you lay it into the rhythm pattern. You layer it into the rhythm pattern, okay? So we've already identified that the rhythm pattern is this. The most important part of that is your left hand. That's what's actually holding this thing together. It's like the foundation that you dug and the concrete that you poured around the foundation, okay? So you want to lay the melody in simply, in the same way that we drilled down the chords really simply. You want to lay the melody in simply without trying to do anything fancy, because you got to get that melody under your hands before you start messing with it. Okay, so once you're kind of comfortable with the melody and you can do it, you're going to have to play it slow probably. You know, at the beginning you might look more like... But once that's comfortable, no matter how slow you have to make it to get it down, then you can slowly pick up the pace. Then the O part of flow is ornament it. You ornament the melody with signatures and improv. So one of the first things that I like to do is I look for the spaces around the melody, because there's always gaps. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, gap. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, gap. When there's a gap, I try to return to the rhythm pattern in my right hand. So I just kind of moved back to the chock whenever I had a chance. Now, some melodies eat up a lot of space, and so you still feel like it's a little empty that way. So the next thing that you can do is you want to play the chord and then play the melody over the top of it. So in other words, you want to use the bottom part of your hand to play the chord that's in the right place and let it sustain a little bit, and then play the melody over the top. So see what I'm doing there is I'm playing the chord, but I'm not really trying to play the chord with the melody. I'm just kind of letting it sustain, and then I'm playing the melody with the top hand part of my hand there. So just kind of nice, sustained chords. The next thing that you can do is you can do some harmonizing of the melody. This is a little more advanced, but you can learn an interval called a sixth. And that's just a space between two notes, and we talk about that at the Piano Man approach. But sixth is oftentimes a very good harmony interval. And so you can actually add a little bit of... along with the melody, you can actually have another note kind of working in rhythm with it, which kind of helps give it a little more fullness. Now, one other thing that you can do with the country feel if you want to give it a little extra pace, because the main thing that I think people complain about with sheet music, other than how rigid it is and how long it takes to learn how to play it, becoming a good sight reader is something that just really tends to take people years and years and years. But they don't like the fact that the arrangement doesn't have any pace. You know, it's that little intangible that having a bass guitar and a drum kit creates for the recording, and you're like, why does it always sound so empty? It's because you don't have pace, and that's where the rhythm patterns come in. Well, when your right hand and your left hand are playing together in an accompaniment fashion, you tend to get that because they help approximate that. But when you have to take your right hand out of the equation and you're playing the melody, then sometimes your left hand creates the pace and sometimes it feels a little empty. But one thing that you can do to enhance the pace in the country feel, notice when we played them together, it was like boom, chop, boom, chop, boom, chop, right? You can approximate that in the left hand by playing your E flats like so. See how I'm playing pinky, thumb, pinky, thumb, pinky, thumb, pinky, thumb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that actually, underneath all of it, gives you this sort of a little bit of a feel like you're up here doing your boom, chaka, boom, chaka, boom, chaka, boom. So. So obviously the hand coordination behind that can be a little bit challenging at first, but if you really get it down, I always say it's not so hard to add in something complex for your hands to figure out, as long as you keep adding things in that are one magnitude, one order of magnitude higher than where you're at. You don't want to try and jump from this to suddenly it's just too much of a jump. But if you add one layer of nuance above after you've mastered the one that you're at, then your hands will be ready for it. And, it'll come together faster than you think. You'll still have to practice it a little bit, but you'll be ready for it. Everything you're doing right now at the level that you can be at is preparing you for one level more. And that's what's great about it. So you can just keep adding layers, and that's what's fun about this method, is that it gives you something that sounds pretty good, that's pretty workable right out of the chute. I mean, a beginning piano player in very short order can be going. That sounds like music. That doesn't sound like a drill. It sounds like music. So it's a really, really great way to get started, and it can get you somewhere satisfying quickly. But you can keep adding layers and adding layers and adding layers, and the more tricks you have in your bag, the more fun stuff you can do with it, so that pretty soon you are, in fact, even if you're playing the melody or whatever. And I'm obviously playing it kind of sloppy because this isn't something that I've practiced and practiced and practiced, but I know how I could make it sound pretty darn sharp. I could just work on it a little bit, but the tools are there. It's just a matter of sharpening them up with these chords at this tempo, the way that I like to do it. And then, kind of perfecting my little bag of tricks within that framework. So it's really, really fun. I love this method. I think it's a great way for beginners and advanced players to get tremendous amounts of joy and fun out of playing, and might prepare you to play in front of people if that's what you want, but who cares if you ever do that or not. The whole thing is just about, getting the juice of being able to live inside the song, have the song coming out of you rather than experiencing it kind of secondhand all the time, which is a great experience too, just being a listener. But man, nothing beats actually getting inside that thing and being the person, being the entity that's making the music. It's still a thrill. I've been doing it for 30 years, and it's still kind of gives me goosebumps and kind of makes me giddy like a little schoolboy whenever I take a new song that I've never played before and I run it through this formula and start playing it. And of course, I've been doing it long enough that I get pretty advanced pretty quick, but for years and years I had to do it in a very simple way, and I get the same feeling now that I did then, and it's a great rush. So I hope that this gives you some idea of how this method works, and if you'd like to learn all of the nuances and tricks that go into it, we do a step-by-step course on it over at the Piano Man Approach, and then we've got a huge archive of videos after you understand how to use the method to expand and expand and expand with all kinds of fun licks and riffs and other variations on rhythm patterns and all that kind of stuff. So you can always head over to pianomanaapproach.com and check out my free material and see if it agrees with you, and maybe there will be something that you can take home with you and use for the rest of your life that'll make piano more fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong. And I'm going to wrap it up for now. I really appreciate you guys tuning in and sitting through this with me, and your comments and just your friendship in general. I love being on YouTube. So thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. And thank you for liking this video and subscribing to my channel if you do so.